Welcome back to Michiana Main Lines. Today we're continuing our story of the Niles to South Bend rail line working southward. This was the presentation by David Korkhouse from the Northern Indiana Railway Society in November of 2023. We're basically kind of following the transfer between Niles and South Bend, the NSB1. And Last time we made it down to the state line, and we're going to continue working south and spend a lot of time at David's stomping grounds and Palisades, which we'll be getting into here shortly. Just bringing up a map here for those who are just joining us for the first time. Basically, we have a map here of Indiana and Michigan. And the line that we're looking at is this right here, Niles to South Bend. And Part one and part two, we made it from Niles to the state line right here. And now we're going to be working from the state line southward into Indiana and spending quite a bit of time at Palisades, which you'll be getting the full story on that here shortly. Bringing up a map here just to look at this a little bit more. To the right is north. And basically, last time we made it right down to here, which is state line. And next up is Adams Road. Uh, Between Adams Road and state line is where Palisades is located. And that's what we're going to be looking at a lot and talking about. But we will continue farther south. We'll look at some more maps when we get more into that area. No sightings in this immediate area. This was just through line. Following pictures are during the Penn Central Conrail area. That's pretty much what most of these are, kind of around the late 70s time period. Stateline Road, Michigan into Indiana. Just a refresh from last time, this is Stateline Road looking north, southbound transfer, NSB1. And just south of here is Palisades. And that's what we're going to be jumping into right now. Palisades Train Order Office, Operator David Korkhouse, June 1974. This was the order office that he set up. This was not official now. This was just a thing that he did. And this is what it looked like. He had a sign there that had Palisades. You see the train order hoops to give train orders to the train. And again, this is not official. So don't go digging up any old maps trying to locate Palisades. This was not an official station. He just put this up and would give information to the engineers, which actually helped them, which we're going to learn here shortly. I mean, it's really an incredible story. And this was a train that was coming south past Palisades. Here's a look at one of the train order information things that he would give the crew. A little bit of background here of what went on. The local out of South Bend would bring cars up to St. Mary's Holy Cross area where there was a siding and then leave those cars. The NSB1 coming south out of Niles would then deal with those cars and leave other cars and take more back to Niles. But they didn't know what was there until they got there. And that can be a problem when you're doing switching. And so what Dave would do, he every day would see what cars were there and then would make out a form such as this to give to the crew by putting it on those hoops or handing it up directly. And that was helpful to them because, again, this was the late 70s. This was before all of the electronic kind of things we have now. There was not as much computerization was just starting, if at all. There wasn't cell phones, so they were kind of working blind. And taking a look at this form here, we kind of see this was on June 3rd of 1974, and he notes here, as of 3:30 p.m., the South Bend Yard Job 10 spotted 67 cars at St. Mary's. So that's the number of cars that they were going to have to deal with when they got there. And he gives the lineup. There was 14 on the south end, or the runoff east side, 26 on the east side main, 27 on the west side passing track, total of 67 cars. And even put at the outdoor temperature 82 degrees, which I can appreciate being a longtime weather buff. So, looking at Palisades here more, here was Palisades in later days when the hoops were already long gone. This was probably closer to disuse of the line. I think it's interesting here to get a good feel of what that track looked like. I mean, it wasn't that well maintained already, which you would expect under the Penn Central regime, but yet it was still being used. You know, you could still see a pretty good shine on the rails, and I've always really liked this kind of line where, you know, they're in bad shape, but they're still being used, and I've tried to create that on my model trains as much as possible. Another shot here from Palisades. This was a Strombeck photo. Good look at the hoops here. If you're kind of new to railroading, what you would do is you would clip train orders. You can kind of see where there's clips here right in the middle of these hoops. Train order or way bills or any such thing, a communication that needed to be given to engineers, conductors, and brakemen would be clipped on there, and then the train would grab them as it flew by, even at high speeds. You know, this was frequently used on main lines, you know, back in the day. And a good look there at the Palisades homemade sign. Another look here now, that's Dave handing up orders to the crew with kind of a handheld hoop, the same type of device. This looks to be probably a northbound train. Another shot here from that same general area of one of the transfer trains passing Palisades. Here's a bit of memorabilia. This was a train order that was November 16, 1968, for a extra move between Niles Junction, and we talked about that in previous parts of this. That's located just south of Niles, and this was for Niles Junction to Notre Dame and return. It might have possibly been a special coal train that would occasionally run out of Niles to go to the University of Notre Dame. And it also notes here not to exceed 5 miles per hour between milepost 35.2 and 36.1. So there could have been some track work going on. Perhaps a derailment had happened there recently or something, broken rail, who knows. Shot of possibly that such train bringing coal to Notre Dame out of Niles. They did occasionally make those kind of moves. Another shot here from kind of Dave's playground, showing a train passing. Another view here of a train from his backyard. I mean, just imagine that, though. You know, that's kind of probably always every train buff's dream, especially as a child. You know, not only to ride on a train, but to be involved somehow with a crew. And I mean, he actually got to do it. He actually performed a service for him, and they appreciated it and rewarded him with unlimited cab rides, which he took advantage of. I mean, you know, it's remarkable. Another train here from his backyard area. Back in the day, you can kind of see that track wasn't a real high profile. In fact, no profile at all. It basically was on flat ground with limited ballast. Probably another one of the reasons why it was slated for abandonment by Conrail fairly early on. Winter of January 30th, 1977. Anyone from this area knows very well the 3 years of 76, 77, and 78 were very rough winters for this part of the country, with the Polar Express in full swing and a lot of lake effect snow. And of course, this culminated in January of 78 with the great blizzard of 78, which virtually shut down this entire area for a week or more, particularly in rural areas. But even in the inner city, in many places, it was a good week in South Bend before side streets were plowed and such as that. I mean, there were drifts probably 20 feet high in many places, with a total of about 40 inches of snow on the ground after this thing was over, and like 3 days of wind. So this was one of the transfers coming by Palisades and actually plowing more snow than doing anything else. Another good winter shot here. Winter wonderland for sure. Close-up view of that. Here we have some video. Palisades, of course, of a train coming through in the dead of winter. Great to have this video. Very little video really of this entire line, so this is really special to have. No sound, unfortunately, but hey, we're not going to be greedy. And even a caboose. One of Dave's first trips, winter of 1963. This is a cab view out of the locomotive, and his family came out to take pictures of the momentous occasion, which, of course, it would be. Like I say, man, that's every rail buff's dream. I know even into my 20s, I still had thoughts of how great it would be to be working on a local, which was kind of what I always enjoyed, was the local switching type stuff rather than mainline action. But I watched enough of the mainline action too. Another view here in the winter time of that general area. Can't even really see the track. Kicking up some snow. That indicates it was probably cold and really cold and dry weather where you get the snow to blow around like that. Another good view here. Yeah, just barely can't even see the rails. And it almost is that icicles hanging from that caboose. Could just be weathering effects. Warmer weather here again. Another good look at that train. Just pretty much just Cinderbellas is pretty much what this track was like back in those days. This is an interesting shot here. That passenger car, there's an interesting story behind that. Back in that time, Penn Central for a while actually ran a commuter train between Elkhart and Chicago. And periodically, the coaches would need repair. And it just so happened that those coaches went to a facility in Michigan City. So they would come up the Niles to South Bend branch, and that's how they would get to Michigan City. So that was the reason for that car being on this particular train, somewhere there in the vicinity of Palisades. Old Santa Fe boxcar there, pretty well weathered, with still the ladders that went up all the way to the top of the car. That's something that disappeared with the modern freight cars. Other winter shot here. You at least get to see the rails in this one. Good in low visibility, blowing snow, just a great winter shots. Something that's a little bit harder to come by these days around here. We don't seem to get really that much of snow anymore, and when we do, it doesn't last as long. But yeah, that's when winters were winter. At least those three particular years of 76, 77, 78 were. But I think these here are earlier, like it showed 63. There were some very good snow years in the 60s as well. Another good view here from the cab. This is probably looking northward, I believe. New York Central locomotive. Again, the same areas. Here's a kind of a summary here. This is pretty interesting just to give you an idea of how much traffic actually flowed on this line back in the day. This was a summary that Dave prepared that covers January 5th to December 26th of 74. And on over to the left here, you see the southbound, over to the right, the northbound. But 144 recorded observations, and total cars carried 4,785, which is a very respectable number of cars. I mean, that would even be good for short line purposes nowadays. The mean was 35 cars, average 33.227. I mean, this is just like, I mean, this is impressive for a young fella to be doing this. And I mean, this is just incredible. Uh, let's see here. The fewest cars was 0. That might have been a light engine move for what reason or another. Most cars was 70. Uh, Earliest movement was at 3:30 p.m., latest at 7 p.m. Because typically, I believe this train ran in the late afternoon. I think it was called for like 3:30 at Niles, and then it would head south to towards South Bend to do the transfer, and then head back north. But total car counts given. And engines used here even 7815 was used 130 times. You see that engine in a lot of the pictures from part 1 and part 2, and you'll see it some more. That definitely what was the main engine used. But several others here used a handful of times or a little bit more. And double necessary between Stateline and Notre Dame, derailment in Roseland, work extra for derailment. I mean, just about the entire history of what happened during that year. Pretty incredible. And that's one of the things that really kind of amazed me was the number of cars that were on these trains. Because when I first started looking at this, I kind of was of the mindset knowing how Penn Central was in the later years and even the early days of Conrail, you almost expected something with very few cars. You would think that's why it ended up abandonment. But they were running healthy trains here. Not that many trains. That was just a north and south movement every day. But it had a respectable number of cars for short line standards even. So another good close-up look here at Palisades. That was when only the base and post were left, no more hoop. Whistle post sign, and a good look here at the grass that covered the rails. This would have been in a later, probably closer to abandonment in the early 80s. Close-up view here of that same picture. over to the left, you see a garage. That there's a little street that ran there, and I believe that was called Hammerschmidt. Now, the Palisades, the significance of that name was that there was a bunch of little side streets here that didn't cross the track, that ran from east to west through here, and one of them, in fact, one kind of close to David's house, was Palisades. So that was the significance of naming this order office Palisades. Another look here, the famous, I call this famous, I think this is just an iconic photo to me of the late Jeff Strombeck. Took this back in 1974. This was taken at Adams Road looking north, and that was the southbound transfer. And there you get a real good look at what that track looked like at that time. Again, deferred maintenance, but still used, and man, I just love that. Another look there of a train in the area. You see a glimpse of a Clark Equipment tractor poking around the trees there, so we know that that came out of Michigan. Okay, so here we continue working southward here. Now we'll bring up the map here and kind of review where we've been and where we're going. The top part of the map this time is being south. So we started here today right here at Stateline Road. And this little circle indicates that there were signal flashers for Stateline Road. All of the Palisades was between Adams and Stateline Road. If you want to look this area up on Google or something. Next up would be Auten Road, also with signals. Brick Road, and there was a siding and spur between Brick and Darden Road. And we determined that at this time, one of those sidings was used by Indiana and Michigan Electric. But there still is some question as to whether way back when there might have been a full passing siding there, but we haven't been able to determine that as yet. And of course, Darden Road, there were no signals there. And then Cleveland Road, which had flashers in later days. That's probably about as far south as we're going to go today. So let's continue. Here's another good shot of what is believed to be Brick Road. This would be most likely a southbound transfer run. One important thing to note here is this area track and all of the Palisades track we looked at today, pretty much the whole central part, that's the section that we talk about when we say service stopped in 81 and the final maintenance run in 84. Of course, the north and the south parts were still operated by Conrail into the 90s. But the interesting thing about this is we talked about quite a bit on one of our previous videos. When Conrail was talking about abandoning the entire South Bend to Niles, it appeared to be split as to which part would be abandoned. It was kind of like they knew they wanted to still get to Notre Dame because at that time the coal was the biggest commodity being hauled. But they weren't sure whether to come in from the north Niles or from the South Bend. Of course, we know how it ended up. They ended up coming in from the south, so this whole center part of the line was pretty much redundant. But, you know, had they decided to come in from Niles, things would have turned out a lot differently. This section here would have been operated into the 90s, so it would have operated for probably over 10 years longer than it did. But that's not what happened, but it's just fun sometimes to kind of think about what could have been. Another shot here of Brick Road. This is off of Dave's video. And the only thing that we've changed in doing this production here now is we've added some of the videos, this being one of them, because this is also Dave's videos. and this kind of gives some life to some of the scenes that we're seeing the pictures of. So let's go ahead now and watch this video clip. Again, no sound, but just great to see this old footage. Up next here, Notre Dame football specials. That was kind of a big deal in earlier years. These shots are from November 8th, 1952. We earlier saw other shots up in the Niles area in the earlier part of this series featuring the street running. But here's a good shot of, well, steam locomotive. You know that this is definitely older stuff. But here we see a train passing through the line. Not totally sure where some of these locations are. In fact, what kind of complicates it is back at this time, what is now Cleveland Road, which is a four-lane highway with signals, back at this time, that didn't exist. There was just a little country road that went through that general area, and I'm not even sure if that was named Cleveland. It might have been named something else, but a few of these shots could have been from there. I'm really not sure where this shot is, or it could be possibly. I don't think it would be brick, but it could be one of the other roads that went through the area there. Not I'm not totally sure. Another shot here from that same general area. No signals, so we know that it was kind of just a single crossing. There also were some side roads in the Roseland area as well. This now we have identified. This is Darden Road. This is just south of Darden Road. Darden Road is coming right through here, and that building you see there in the distance, that would have been the Adams Engineering Building, and there was a siding here which we see that came up to Darden Road, and that was used as a coal transfer track, and that pretty much I believe was already gone probably by the late 70s, but at this time it was still there. So this is Darden Road. Another look here now. I think this might be what is now the Cleveland Road area, because what really gets me going here is this area right here. This kind of looks to me like this is a little bit of a bridge, which there is one just to the north of Cleveland Road. That's Judy Creek that runs under there. So I'm kind of thinking this might be Cleveland Road, at least the way it looked back in the 50s. And there's also kind of a pretty good embankment there to the left, which jives with Cleveland Road. Because a lot of people see the wing sign and think it's another shot of brick, but brick didn't have that kind of incline. So now we continue south Darden and Cleveland roads under new Indiana Toll Road. This, of course, is in the new days. This might be one of those winter shots out of the cab, and I believe this is heading north towards Cleveland Road. This shot here, we see clearly there is the toll road overpass, and farther back here you can see the new Cleveland Road. You get a little glimpse of the signals that were up there, and here would be Macomb Street, which ran just to the west side and then went westward. Here's definitely Cleveland Road, another one of what I call an iconic Strombeck photos. This would be a southbound transfer crossing Cleveland Road. Again, that's the new Cleveland Road. But back in the day, before the new Cleveland Road was put in, there was just a two-lane country road that crossed right here in this area. And so you can see here, this is that embankment area, and a little farther back would be the Judy Creek Bridge. Here's Cleveland Road again, looking north, and this is a very good shot here. I mean, this is something that's, when we talk about rare shots here, this is a rare shot. That was a maintenance crew working just north of Cleveland Road. You get a good look there at the condition of the track also, and what it looked like, pretty much weed covered. I believe that's Dave riding right on top of that's a Jordan spreader, that crazy looking device. We'll take a little closer look at that here from other shots. If you notice, it kind of has those wings on the side. Those were like adjustable arms and blades. And nowadays, there's a multitude of fancy equipment to do just about every job that needs to be done on the railroad. But this at the time was a very versatile piece of machinery, and they are still used in places today. They would be used for grading, like they're doing in this particular case, and clearing brush on the sides of the track. But they were also used for ballast spreading. That's the rocks that go between the ties and alongside the bed for drainage. And they were also used for plowing snow. You see this nice blade here in the front. This V plow was very good for plowing heavy and deep snow. And in places where snow was really accumulating to the point where there was no room to push it anymore, these side arms could be extended and push the snow even farther from the track to allow room for more. Here's a close-up view of how they're grading the side there, and making the profile for drainage, and a drainage ditch on the side of the track, which looks like it was really needed, as in places this track was pretty flat and probably prone to flooding. Another good look here at that particular maintenance operation. So I think this is a good stopping point here for part 3. We'll continue next time working further south. A lot of people here we need to thank that helped David with putting this together. Tom Burke, with his correct spelling, David Phillips, Doc Bachman, Dan Lewacki, Dan Schmidt, Tom Capshire from the Monon Society, Cindy Goodrick, Lou Ragg, George Elwood, Kyle Korkhouse, Niles Crewbase. Just about everybody here helped in some way, either with pictures or video or maps or just plain old information that Dave needed. So it's important to recognize that. And also me and Michiana Mainlines, I'll kind of put a plug in there. So if you're new to this, if you just got pushed here and you really like this South Bend to Niles, make sure you watch part 1 and part 2 of this particular series, but also check out, there's a lot of other videos on South Bend to Niles on this channel, as well as other locations in northern Indiana and southern Michigan. But concerning South Bend to Niles, there's even newer video from the Conrail period in the 90s, when the north and south ends that we talk about were still operated. And again, rare stuff that really isn't available anywhere else. So be sure to check that out. Again, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.